What's up guys, Escape Good here. So I wanted this to be a separate video than my Blackboard episode. I could make it into another Blackboard episode theoretically, but I think it's easier just to talk to you guys. So here's another aspect that I think a lot of anti-meta, I don't think a lot of anti-meta players grasp, which is knowing which deck to play in which format. You know, it was something that that I did a lot of when I first started. I picked the wrong deck, or I picked a deck that was good like 3 years ago and tried to adapt it to the current meta, and it wouldn't work. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? So I think it's something to go over, because I think that, like on my Facebook group, the Anti-Meta Alliance, link in the description, that's something that I see a lot of, is I see people that, I mean, granted, some people just post fun decks, and that's all well and good, but there are people that post their anti-meta lists, and it's just a bunch of either conglomerate of junk, which I talked about in my last video, or it's a case where they pick the deck that really doesn't make any sense to play in this format, or in this specific format. So here's an example of that, is that, like, if you are playing in a format where, let's say, Paleozoic and Mermail are the big decks, what do Paleozoic and Mermail have in common? They're extremely graveyard reliant, and they occasionally exceed, or they special summon, either way. So why on earth would you play cards that don't affect the graveyard? You know, or if you're not playing cards that don't affect the graveyard, you know, you at least have to have a strategy that would accomplish the same thing, which would be to shut down the opposing player's deck. You know, if your deck has 3 Denko Sekka and 3 Twin Twister in it, sure, you don't really need to or maybe not so much Denko Sekka, that'd be in the side deck. Let's say the meta is just Paleozoic. Okay, Paleozoic everywhere. Okay, so if you have 3 Denko Sekka and 3 Twin Twister in your deck, sure, I can completely understand you not playing any kind of graveyard hate, because you already have a very good Paleo matchup. But if you're playing just miscellaneous cards like Lose a Turn or Summon Limit or other random stuff like that, you know, what are you doing? Well, actually, Summon Limit wouldn't be terrible against Paleo, but let's focus more on cards like Lose a Turn, which doesn't really make any sense to play. They can still exceed. No, they don't get the effects for the turn. It's really good. No, it's not. They're going to get the effects in the opposing player's turn. They're almost always going to go for Triatoad as opposed to the Paleozoic exceeds, so it doesn't really make any sense to play it. So you're just asking them to make Triatoad. So that's another thing, is that just know what to play. So if the meta is, let's say, all graveyard, like something I do is I write down what is going, like what the meta has in common, or what the meta does. Like, does the meta special summon a lot? Does it exceed a lot? Does it synchro a lot? You know, which thing does it do? You know, okay, so it special summons a lot. What does it summon? What kind of stuff does it summon? You know, does it summon from the main deck? Does it summon from the extra deck? Does it special from the hand? Is it a pendulum deck? You know, does it fusion a lot? You know, you get these things down to an exact science. You understand what they do, and you know, if maybe they're different or they have different aspects, then go deck by deck. Let's say Shadow BA Satellar format. Okay, what is Shadow BA Satellar? They're all, to an extent, graveyard decks. Obviously, Shadow and BA are huge graveyard decks, but even Satellars, you know, when they run, you know, Triple Call the Haunted, Triple Oasis, just to recycle Omega, or Deneb over and over again. Okay, so to an extent, they're all graveyard decks. That's good. That means they have something in common. They also all special summon a lot. Okay, good. They have something else in common. So, but pretty much past that, you know, okay, they all go into the extra deck, though. That's another big thing. So they all special summon a lot, they all special from the extra deck a lot, and they're all graveyard decks. So right there, there's three big things that are in common that you could easily build a deck around. You know, or like, let's say if your opponent's playing Klee and they need to have a scout in play, you can very easily build a deck to combat very linear strategies like that. You know, you don't even need to floodgate your opponent. If your opponent's playing, you know, Klee, play artifacts. You know, 3 MST, 3 Ignition, Sanctum for Mortal Tech. Is Mortal Tech at 2? I don't even remember. Whatever. 3 MST, 3 Ignition, Sanctum for Moral Talk, and then like Fairy Winds in your side deck, you know, and then if you want to play a Trap Tricks engine to search for Bottomless, Time Space, Floodgate Trapple, all those random cards, you know, I mean, like, if it really makes that matchup a lot more difficult for them. And then, like, let's say it's BA, Satellar, Shadow format. You know, okay, well, they don't do the same thing, though. Like, their strategies are not as linear as, like, let's say the Klee deck is. So, rather than going for cards that, let's say, help your strategy and hurt their strategy, like MST and Ignition, it doesn't have the same effect, you know what I mean? So I think that a better example, like better cards to play against those kind of decks, would be more Floodgate-oriented cards. You know, Banisher the Radiance, Banisher the Light, Macrocosmos, Defissure, all do pretty well against, well, I mean, obviously it destroys everything except Defissure. We'll leave Defissure out of the equation. But all of the cards I just mentioned, Banisher Radiance, Banisher Light, Macro, all these cards like Different Dimension Ground even, they all crush Shadows, they all crush BA, and they're pretty good against Stellars. I wouldn't play DD Ground against Stellars, but you get what I'm saying. So they all special summon. Let's throw Fossil Dynas in there. Do Shadows, BA, and Stellars all search? Obviously, Stellars, they search quite a bit. Shadows, they need to search, for their fusions and stuff like that. So, like, let's say if they put Hedgehog face down and like set a Shadow Games and end their turn, so that way they can flip and get something in hand, get something going. Maybe then a good retaliation, that would be playing cards like Thunder King. Because worst case scenario, they're going to use Shadow Games and they're going to have to send like a Squamata or a Beast as opposed to sending Hedgehog. And then if they flip a Squamata, oh well, it happens. And any card like that you would just put out there first turn is going to die to a Squamata getting flipped anyway. So Thunder King wouldn't be the worst option against them. So you have Banishers and Macro and stuff like that. You have this solid normal summon-oriented deck. You can play Demises in it as well. So that you have these different options against these three decks that really are the same deck essentially whenever you play certain floodgates against them. So that's just one example, and there are other examples I'm sure that you guys can think of, but that's a thing that I think a lot of people, they don't really understand, is that they're like, oh, well, GK, like I saw one Gravekeeper profile in particular that pissed me off really badly. It was during a Duelist Alliance format, where Stellars were around, BA was around, Shadows were around, Klee was around, and this dude was like, yeah, in general, Gravekeepers can't really beat Shadows or BA or Stellars or Klee. I was like, are you kidding? Take out of this what you will. When I went to YCS Columbus, I've told the story a million times that the judges royally screwed me over, but I started off 3-0 by 2-0ing both of my Necroz opponents and beating my Clipboard opponent. And the Clipboard matchup is hands down your worst matchup. It's not even close when it comes to GKs. But what you would do is you would side into Burn. You would immediately scoop game one because there's no chance in hell you're going to win game one. You side in Cylinders, you side in MSTs, you side in Spell Shattering Arrows. That's what I did at least. And you just you side out the Necro Valleys and shit like that, and you just side into a straight, like, burn stun deck almost, you know what I mean? So they would go paid 100, maybe they'll go Wavering Eyes. I don't remember if Wavering Eyes is out at the time, but let's say they go Wavering Eyes and then they play another Scout and they pay 800, and then finally when they complete their scales, you're going to Spell Shattering into them for like 15. So 16 of 15, that's 3,100 right there. You're at almost half your points right there. Then if they go Skill Drain on a disc or something and swing over you and they swing into a Cylinder, they're probably going to lose. So it's just all about knowing when to play certain cards, when not to play certain cards, when to play a certain deck, when not to play a certain deck. If this is a format like where there's a lot of special summoning and there's no effects that happen on your turn, like there's no Zodiac Trident, there's no the Spiral Trap card that compulses something, there's no Firewall Dragons. If it's just, I'm going to make a big-ass field and you have to get over it, play Barrier Statues, because one, you can always flip Fossil Dyna. Cards like Darkhold and Raigeki are probably going to be pretty good versus them, among other things, Mirror Forces, Moon Mirror Shields, things like that. If you don't have to worry about effects, you're just worried about them throwing a big field against you, so then play Barrier Statues. If you do have to worry about those big fields that do have during either player's turn effects, like let's say Firewall Dragon, or I don't know, Firewall Dragon's all that comes to mind, or like the Spiral Trap card, or other things like that, or if you have to worry about Apocryphal Towers or something like that, play Kaiju. Whether you're playing a pure Kaiju deck or whether you're just playing, straight, like just a Kaiju engine, Kaiju really work in that case. If you're going to play a pure Kaiju deck, play cards like Fairy Tail Luna, which is in itself its own Kirin. If you tribute their Apocryphal Killer for a Radion, I guarantee you they don't have a Radion in their deck. And so then as a result, what do? You summon Fairy Tail Luna, you search for another one, you put your Kaiju down on your field, and then you bounce the Radion back to your hand with the Luna, and you just gone, +2 off of that play, and now you have like let's say whether it's a Kumungus or whether it's a Jizakuru or whatever the case calls for, and now you have a big monster on your side of the field and they don't have anything, But then, what if they pendulum summon? Okay, well if it's pendulum summoning meta, or if it's a meta that special summons quite a bit, you'll do well to play cards like Bottomless, to play cards like Time Space, to play cards like Floodgate, to play Mirror Forces, to play anything of the sort, really. Or, I've played Fossil Dynas in my my kaiju decks before, because like it's a case where if the meta is like all small monsters, let's say, but it's small monsters that turn into big monsters, like let's say a wind-up deck or something like that, you can do well to play cards like Fossil Dyna, you know, where you can even just throw them out normal summon turn 1 and have like a back row or 2 set, and you can feel confident against whatever the case calls for. So I think it's a case where a lot of people don't understand. You should know what to play and when to play it, but I feel like a lot of people don't. You know, oh, I'm going to play Wiretap and Gravekeepers in this particular meta, and I'm like, for what? You know, you'll find a trap card here or there. You know, if you play against Paleozoic, sure, you have Wiretap, but I mean, in most cases, you're going to worry about Twin Twister when you play GKs. That's about it. Or at least that's the main thing, I should say. That wasn't right for me to say that that's all you worry about, but that's the main thing that you worry about. Now, what counters Twin Twister? Dark fucking Bribe. Whatever. I plan on making a video, like remaking my Dark Bribe video, because I think it was kind of poorly made and quickly made now that I look back on it. Just as a side note, but I feel like I hope that this provided some kind of input to you guys, that hopefully maybe you understand a little bit more about what to play and when to play it. If you guys have any questions, leave some comments, and let me know what decks you guys think may be good this format, because from what I've heard, from what people are telling me, that Spirals are still going to be tier 1. I'm not sure about that, but maybe. I could be totally wrong. That Spirals are still going to be tier 1, and that the rest of the decks that were trying to keep up with Spiral last format are now going to be able to keep up in this format. So what decks are you guys playing right now? Let me know. So that's about it. Hope you enjoyed. Catch you next time. Peace. No, I'm kidding. Kaboom.